There are three things that we learn from today's lessons. But before I go into that, let me ask you this question. Is anybody confused about that bit that St. Paul talks about the rock and Christ and following and water and all? Is anybody confused about that? Okay, a few nods, okay. If you go to my website, edwills.net, there's a whole bunch of Bible studies there, and there's a whole lot of Bible studies on the book of Exodus. I explain all of that. So if you have any wonderings about some of these Old Testament things, go to my website, edwills.net, find the Bible studies and listen to them. They're audio only, but you can listen to those Bible studies. Okay, now back to today's homily. Three things we learn from the lessons today. And the first we learn from Moses' encounter with God. You know, when Moses encountered God in the burning bush, he knew this was something special because the bush looked like it was burning. It was glowing and maybe flames were coming out of it. We don't know exactly what he saw, but the bush seemed to be on fire and it wasn't being burned up. And so Moses asks, he knows that he's encountering a God, but he doesn't know which God. And so he asks the bush, which God are you? What is your name? I mean, the Akkadians referred to God as Elohim and the Canaanites El, and there are all kinds of names of God. He grew up in Egypt with lots and lots of gods. Who are you? What is your name? Without knowing God's name, he wouldn't know how to respond properly to God. But God answers Moses in the most surprising way. God says, I am. I am. You know, translators try to make sense out of that repetition. And so sometimes you see, I am who I am, or I am that I am. But in Hebrew, it's just, I am, I am. That repetition is to emphasize the importance of what God is saying. God is I am. That's God's name. A lot of times we talk about God as if God is his name, but God is just a German word that means the one to whom you pray. That's why we talk about pagan gods and Christian gods, all kinds of things. But God's name that he gives himself is I am. St. Thomas Aquinas, in reflecting upon this encounter between Moses and God at the burning bush, says that in naming himself I am, God declares that he is the true act of to be. Bishop Robert Barron, in writing on the same passage, comments that we should not think of God as a supreme being, but as supremely being. For in declaring himself I am, he is saying that he is all being. St. Paul reflects on this and says, there is one God and Father of all, who is in all and with all and through all. St. Peter writes, in him we live and move and have our being. See, most of us, we grow up and we have a very concrete concept of God that we learn mostly as kids. That's why when I do children's homilies, I always bring some kind of concrete object that they can handle, they can play with, that they can see. Because as children, we conceive the world in concrete terms. We conceive of God in concrete terms. And so most of us as children grow up with the idea that God is sitting on a throne somewhere in heaven, and he kind of treats us like pieces on a chessboard. And so we spend our lives trying to talk God into things, to give us the things that we want, to avoid the things that we don't want. But if God is I am, if he is all and in all and through all, well, then that's a different matter altogether. All things that come to us, in fact, all things in the universe, are themselves an expression of God's presence. We can never escape from God. He is always with us. In fact, the very energy that empowers every atom of every molecule of every cell in your body is an expression of the presence of God. He is all and is in all. Suddenly, we have a much more expansive understanding of God. You know, the guy on the throne up in heaven, toying with us. Well, that might be a good description of Zeus or Jupiter or some pagan god, but it's not our God. Our God is I am. And to prove that all that is embodied in God, God united the spiritual with the physical in the person of Jesus. In the incarnation, heaven and earth become one. God becomes flesh. Think about that. That's powerful. That changes our whole lives, because no longer are we trying to, make God like us or do what we want for him or try to. No, we become an expression of God in the world. And so we're not trying to get God on our side. We're trying to get in the flow of God so that we can be on God's side. To get in the flow of God. Jesus talks about this in so many ways. If you want mercy, be merciful. If you want to be forgiven, forgive others. If you want the gifts of God, be fruitful and give to all. Get in the flow of what God is doing. Jesus even says of himself, I only do what I see the Father doing. And elsewhere, everything the Father has spoken to me, I have spoken to you. Jesus was in the perfect flow of his Father. And we are called to be in the flow of God. For all that is an expression of God. God is all and is in all. The second thing, we better get to the second thing or we'll be here all day, right? The second thing that we learn from these readings is that God is for us. God is for us. Sometimes we worry about, we don't want to make God angry. We don't want to get God against us. We don't want God to stop liking us, stop loving us. Here's the thing. There is nothing you can do to make God love you any less. There is nothing you can do that will make God love you anymore. There is nothing you can do to make God stop loving you, because love is not something God does. Love is who he is. He is for you. It is his sole desire to pour himself into you so that you can enjoy the fullness of the riches of his blessing here, now, in this life, in this world, and then in the world to come, life everlasting. Because everything on this planet is passing away. Did you know that? Everything that we own, everything we know, everything we own, it's all going to go away. In fact, did you realize that our sun is a fourth generation star? Did y'all know that? That before our sun existed, there were 3 other stars. A star was born, it ignited, it shined for a while, and then it exploded, throwing out into space hydrogen and all the heavy elements that were created in the star. That's what a star does, by the way. It takes hydrogen, and through this process called atomic fusion, it fuses all those molecules together and all those subatomic particles to create heavy metals, copper, nickel, iron, ultimately iron. And when it explodes, it casts all that out into the universe, out into space. And then the hydrogen begins to recoalesce and make another star. and it explodes and casts all that out into space. That happened 3 times before our sun was formed. And from the hydrogen that was left over from the 3 stars in front of it, and the metals that it cast out, the heavy elements that were cast out from these exploding stars, they come together to form planets. 3 stars lived and died so that we could have a planet to stand on. God is for us. He has ordered the entire universe to care for us. It's amazing. And when he created this garden he calls Earth, he did it in such a fashion that he doesn't have to come back to work anymore, because the planet, everything that he created just continues on. The vegetation casts out seeds, and those seeds make soil and begin to decay, and everything happens and in perpetuity. So God created a garden for us to live in, this garden we call Earth. St. Francis talks about it that in his encyclical Laudate Si. We have been given a garden to care for, and it's our job to tend this garden we call Earth. And this Earth was created by the stars that died before our sun came. And by the way, our sun's going to explode too. Did you know that? Yeah. Now, don't worry about it. Scientists tell us it's got 5 billion more years before it's going to explode. So this is not something we need to put on our calendar. But it all continues. And the entire universe itself will die in about 15 to 20 billion years. Some scientists say before that happens, our universe will give birth to another universe. I'm not too sure about that, but that's what they say. But that's the way of all things, isn't it? That we come into existence, we recreate the generation to follow, and then we pass out of existence. That's the plan. God is for us, and he gives us all these things. He pours his blessing into us. And we cannot stop his love for us, but we can cut ourselves off from it by refusing to allow the flow of God. It's all about being in the flow of God. If we want to stop God's mercy, then all we have to do is stop being merciful to others. If we want to stop God's forgiveness, we just have to stop forgiving others. If we want to stop God's blessing, we just need to become stingy and selfish and refuse to help others. But if we allow God to love all creation through us, then the blessings never cease. God is for us. The third thing we learn from these readings is that when bad things happen, it does not mean God is angry with us. Sometimes we get really concerned about that. I don't want God to get mad at me. I don't want to do anything that will make God hate me, be against me. I don't want to make God smite me. God doesn't do that. His very nature is to love you. He can't stop. That's who he is. So when bad things and difficult things come along in life, that doesn't mean God's angry with us. It's just life. All of us, good and bad, are going to have some wonderful times in life, and we'll have some hard times in life. All of us will have times of triumph, and all of us will have times of struggle. That's the way life is, because we live in a physical universe. And one of the characteristics of a physical universe is what we call entropy. Entropy is a physical law that means everything in the universe tends from order into disorder. Now, because we live in a physical universe, we have some great privileges here. We get to know love, family, community, the joy of working together, the joy of participating in the creative act of God. We get all those wonderful things because we live together in a physical universe. But the flip side of that coin is, because we live in a physical universe, we will all experience hardships, suffering, and ultimately die. But that doesn't mean God doesn't love us. That's just the way the universe works. But if we allow God, if we're in the flow of God, what we discover is that even our struggles fulfill the purpose of God, because God promised that all things, everything that happens works together for the good of those who love God, who are called according to His purpose. So as we live in the flow of God, even our struggles fulfill God's purpose within us. Because it is our struggles that build character in us. And in the strength of our character gives birth to hope. And hope, when lived fully, becomes faith. Our struggles themselves strengthen us to fulfill God's purpose. And in fulfilling God's purpose, we gain meaning and purpose in life, find fulfillment in life. There was some kids in a classroom, a little science classroom, elementary school, and what they were going to do was observe a cocoon, a caterpillar that weaves a cocoon and then comes out as a butterfly. We all know how that works, right? It's pretty amazing, pretty fascinating. So they went around the neighborhood and they found some cocoons hanging on trees, and they put them in a little terrarium, and they were going to watch to see if butterflies came out of these cocoons, right? So they watched for days and waited, and then one day, one of those cocoons began to rock back and forth, and then began to quiver and shake and move around, and the kids were all excited. They're watching this, watching, and it's taking longer than they expect. And finally, they began to see one small, tiny hole appear in the cocoon. And then they saw, "Yay, it's going to come out," but it's still not coming out. It's still rocking and rolling. And so one young man, one little boy in the classroom decides he's going to help. And so he very carefully and gently begins to open up the hole and make it bigger and wider until finally the butterfly is able to fall out of the cocoon and land on the table and very shortly thereafter die. Because it is the struggle to open the cocoon which strengthens the wings of the butterfly so that it can fly and live. Without the struggle, it will never have the strength to fly. It will not even have the strength to live. In our struggles, God works goodness in us so that we can fulfill His purpose. Christ has given us a commission to make disciples of all the nations, to make disciples of our friends, of our neighbors, of everyone we know. And that takes some strength. That takes some courage. That takes standing up for what is right and true and good. And it is the struggles in life that enable us to stand for God and fulfill His purpose. 3 things we learn from these lessons. God is much bigger than we thought. He is all and is in all. And He is for us. God is for you. And even when the hard times come, God will use those struggles to build Himself within you so that you can carry Him into all the world.